Chapter 1. Shadows Beneath the Neon Glow. South Korea is known for its neon skylines, bustling cities, and sleek modern tech, but behind that dazzling surface lies something older and darker. Beneath the towering glass buildings and crowded subway tunnels are stories whispered from generation to generation, stories born from grief, betrayal, and unfinished lives. In Korea, ghost folklore isn't just entertainment, it's embedded in everyday life. They even have a name for these wandering spirits, gwishin, souls that failed to move on. Some are mournful, lingering out of love. Others are angry, bound to the mortal world by the weight of injustice. People leave offerings, avoid certain roads at night, and keep talismans by their doors, just in case. You'll often see it in Korean horror films, a pale woman with long black hair draped across her face, silently standing at the end of a hallway. That isn't just a movie trope, it's rooted in a specific ghost, the Cheonyo Gwishin, the virgin ghost, and she's just one of many. Tonight, we're digging into 3 of Korea's most chilling urban legends, tales that have kept people from sleeping for decades. Some are tied to real places you could visit today. Others have twisted and mutated as they passed from mouth to mouth, each storyteller adding another layer of fear. So turn off the lights, silence your phone, and let the quiet creep in, because these next stories, they have been waiting for you. Chapter 2. In the heart of Korea's countryside stands an abandoned haynock, a traditional wooden house, its once graceful wooden beams sagging, its paper windows torn to ribbons by decades of relentless wind. Ivy has crept over the tiled roof like veins, choking out what little sunlight dares to touch it. The villagers call it the widow's house, though no widow ever lived there. They say that at night, if you stand outside its gates and call out her name 3 times, she will answer. Not with words, but with a scream so sharp it slices the night open and freezes your bones where you stand. The Cheonyo Gwishin Bass, is one of Korea's oldest and most feared spirits, a figure woven through centuries of folklore and whispered warnings. According to tradition, she is the spirit of an unmarried woman who died too young, before experiencing love, marriage, or motherhood. In the rigid Confucian structure of old Korea, a woman's purpose was considered incomplete without marriage. To die unmarried was to die unfulfilled, and so her soul roams the earth, furious, envious, and cursed to linger, trapped between this world and the next. Descriptions of her appearance are eerily consistent across the country, from mountain villages to bustling cities. She manifests as a pale young woman in a white hanbok, the color traditionally worn for funerals. Her hair is long and loose, spilling over her face, something no living unmarried woman would ever do in traditional society, as loose hair symbolized chaos and mourning. Those who have claimed to see her speak of the air turning unnaturally cold, of dogs suddenly going silent mid-bark, of shadows on the walls bending ever so slightly toward her as if drawn by invisible gravity. Old records from the late Joseon dynasty describe how villagers once hired shamans to perform Yonghong-Gyeolhong ghost marriages. The rituals were elaborate affairs, with paper effigies of the bride and groom burned together under the moonlight, offerings of food and silk left for the wandering spirit. The belief was that if a Cheonyo Gwishin was haunting a home, the only way to appease her was to symbolically marry her off to another ghost, giving her the life she was denied. Only then would she cease tormenting the living. The terror she brings isn't just physical, it's deeply psychological. Locals say she doesn't rush at you or shriek from the shadows like a monster in a film. Instead, she watches. You feel her before you see her, a creeping pressure behind your eyes, a sudden weight in the air, like someone leaning over your shoulder just out of sight. She's patient, they say. She chooses her victims carefully. She prefers the arrogant, those who enter her space laughing, doubting, mocking. She lets them laugh, then she waits until they are alone. One modern tale, told in hushed tones around Gwangju, tells of a group of university students who dared each other to sneak into an abandoned girls' dormitory just outside the city. It had been closed for decades after a mysterious fire gutted the top floor. The villagers claimed the building was cursed. The students claimed they weren't scared. They brought flashlights, snacks, and smartphones to record their ghost hunt for social media clout. At first, nothing happened. Dusty hallways, empty rooms, broken mirrors, the usual. They laughed louder the more nervous they became, mocking the local legends. One girl her friends called her So-hee posed in front of a cracked mirror with her hair draped over her face, pretending to be the Cheonyo Gwishin. They all howled with laughter as the camera clicked. Hours later, as the group was packing up to leave, they realized Sohee was gone. They assumed she'd gone ahead to the car, but the car was empty. They searched every room, calling her name. Nothing. Eventually, terrified and trembling, they fled. Her phone was found weeks later in the dorm's attic, buried under a pile of ash and rotted insulation. The screen was cracked. The battery was dead. But when police extracted the last photo taken, their blood ran cold. It showed Sohee standing perfectly still in the attic's corner, but her hair was completely down, covering her face, and her posture was wrong, almost boneless. Her arms hung like wet cloth, and her eyes peeking just barely through the strands of black hair were not her own. People who looked at that photo said they had nightmares for days. They dreamt of standing in endless dark hallways, of hearing their own name whispered softly from behind, of seeing a woman's silhouette at the end of the corridor, not moving, not blinking, just waiting. Even now, older Koreans warn, never taunt the Cheonyo Gwishin. Do not call her name, do not mock her sorrow, do not dare her to appear. She doesn't forget, she doesn't forgive. Those who encounter her aren't always killed, sometimes they simply unravel. A once cheerful girl becomes silent, withdrawn, staring into corners and muttering about someone standing there. A healthy young man wakes screaming every night at 3:15 a.m., the exact time he saw her outside his window. Some vanish for hours, only to be found wandering miles from home, barefoot and shivering, unable to explain where they've been. There's an old saying passed down in rural villages: if she looks at you, really looks at you, she will follow you home. People who claim to survive seeing her often describe the same sequence. First, the sudden silence, then the faint smell of rotting chrysanthemums, then the shape of a woman just barely visible at the edge of their vision. If they look directly, she's gone, but when they glance away, she's closer. Some paranormal researchers in Seoul have even tried to record her presence using motion sensors and infrared cameras. The devices picked up nothing, but the footage captured something stranger. The researchers themselves, standing alone in the room, slowly turning their heads toward the corner as if responding to a voice no microphone could catch. A moment later, their body temperatures dropped by 3 degrees. All of them reported the same dream that night, wandering through an abandoned hanok, hearing footsteps behind them, unable to run because the air had become as heavy as water. And somewhere behind them, always just beyond the range of sight, the sound of long wet hair dragging across the floor. The Cheonyo Gwishin is not loud. She is not dramatic. She does not roar or lunge. She waits. She watches. She remembers. And she hungers not for flesh, but for something far more unsettling. So if you ever find yourself in a forgotten corner of Korea's countryside, passing by a crumbling hanok as the sun sinks behind the mountains and the wind dies all at once, don't stop, don't look, don't say her name. Because if she hears you, if she even suspects you've noticed her, it's already too late. She will follow, and she will never stop. Chapter 3. Travel south to the quiet city of Myeryang and you'll find a lonely stone pavilion called Arang Pavilion. It sits at the edge of a shallow river surrounded by bamboo that hisses softly even when the air is still. Tourists see a quaint landmark, a picturesque slice of old Korea. Locals know better. They walk a little faster when they pass it, eyes fixed on the ground, never daring to glance up at the roof after dark, because they know who waits there. They call her Arang, and she is not done telling her story. Hundreds of years ago during the Joseon dynasty, Arang was the only daughter of a local magistrate. She was said to be beautiful, spirited, and clever, with eyes that flashed like polished obsidian. Her father adored her but was often away managing official duties, leaving her in the care of a trusted nanny. Or so he thought. The nanny, secretly conspiring with a lowly servant, plotted to abduct her for ransom. On a humid summer night, they lured her away from the magistrate's home, whispering that her father had returned unexpectedly and was waiting in the bamboo grove outside town. She followed without question, the moonlight painting silver threads through the bamboo. But instead of her father, only darkness waited. When she resisted, they attacked her. She fought fingernails clawing, voice breaking the night, but no one came. They stabbed her and left her crumpled among the reeds, blood soaking into the damp soil. The bamboo whispered as her life seeped away. When she never returned home, her father assumed the worst. that she had run away with a lover, tarnishing the family's honor. Shamed and grief-stricken, he resigned his post and disappeared from public life. But Miryang itself did not forget, because from that night on, something strange began to happen. Every magistrate who replaced her father met the same fate. On their first night in office, they would lock their doors, light incense, and pray for a quiet evening. But by morning, they were found dead. No wounds, no blood, just pale and cold, eyes frozen wide in terror, mouths stretched in silent screams. Some were found curled under their desks, fingernails broken from clawing the wooden floor. Others were discovered at the gates, as if trying to flee. Not one survived a single night. Whispers spread like rot through the city. Orang's ghost was murdering every magistrate who dared to set foot in her city. Officials begged to be reassigned rather than take the cursed post. The pavilion near the river was abandoned. The town grew quiet, like it was holding its breath. Then came a young magistrate named Yi Sang-sa. He was known as bold, perhaps reckless, the kind of man who laughed at ghost stories. When he accepted the Miryang post, elders warned him of the curse. Yi only smiled. "If the dead wish to speak," he said, "I will listen." On his first night, he barred the doors and sat alone in the magistrate's office, the moonlight slicing pale lines across the floor. As the clock passed midnight, the air grew icy, the candle flames shrank. The bamboo grove outside fell eerily still. Then, from the shadows, she emerged. She wore a torn hanbok, streaked with blackened blood. Her skin was grey and waxy, clinging to sharp bones. Hollow eyes glowed white, like dying embers. Her hair floated gently as though underwater. And yet, she was silent. Yi did not run. He did not scream. He sank to his knees. "I am not your enemy," he whispered, voice trembling but steady. "Tell me who did this." The ghost froze. Slowly, the air shifted, like the world was leaning closer to hear. Then, in a voice like silk tearing, she named her killers. Yi acted at dawn. He dragged the nanny and the servant from their homes, bound them to the pavilion posts, and executed them with a single strike each. The villagers watched in horrified silence as the sun rose blood-red over the bamboo. When their heads hit the stones, the wind suddenly stopped. That night, for the first time in years, the new magistrate survived until morning. And they say Orang's ghost appeared one final time standing barefoot on the pavilion's roof, bathed in golden sunrise. She smiled, faint and fleeting, and dissolved into mist. The killing stopped, but her story didn't. Today, festivals in Miryang still honor Orang's memory, painting her as a tragic heroine and symbol of justice. Children wear costumes of white hanbok and carry lanterns through the streets, singing her name. Locals leave flowers at the pavilion steps, not out of celebration but appeasement. They say it is unwise to let her feel forgotten, because some nights the pavilion still wakes. Fishermen walking home late have glimpsed a lone girl standing on its roof, sleeves fluttering though the air is still. Passing cyclists hear footsteps crunching on the gravel behind them, though no one is there. A few claim that when they crossed the bridge at midnight, the water beneath turned black as ink, and something pale drifted just below the surface, keeping pace with them until they reached the far side. The bravest or the most foolish sometimes climb the steps and whisper, "Did you find peace, Orang?" They wait, and sometimes the wind answers, a soft sigh, like a girl releasing her final breath. Other times, it howls through the bamboo so violently they stumble back down the stairs in panic, swearing they heard a girl's voice, sharp, angry, unfinished screaming just behind their ear. The elders say this is how she tests you. If your heart is pure, she answers softly. If it is not, she remembers. And Orang, they say, never forgives. Even now, centuries later, no magistrate dares enter Miryang without paying respect to her pavilion. They bow 3 times at dawn, leaving white chrysanthemums and a letter of apology for what was done to her, because they know what the old city knows. Orang is still watching. So if you ever find yourself in Miryang as the sun sets and the bamboo starts to hiss, do not linger by the pavilion, do not step onto the stones, do not call her name, because she will hear you, and if she hears you, she will come. She will come to see if you are just. And if you are not, she will make sure you never wake to see the morning light. Chapter 4. If you ever drive from Seoul to Incheon at night, you'll take Jayu-ro, the Freedom Road. It's a long, sleek stretch of asphalt slicing through miles of black marshland, with nothing but empty fields and stagnant pools of water on either side. By day, it's ordinary, even dull, a straight modern highway lined with reflective signs and mechanical speed cameras. But when night falls, something about it changes. The darkness here feels heavier, like it's pressing against the glass, and the road ahead seems to stretch forever, swallowing the glow of your headlights whole. Truck drivers talk about this road in hushed tones at roadside diners, glancing at the door as if they're afraid she might come walking in. Taxi drivers who work the night shift often refuse fares that involve driving along Jeju-ro, shaking their heads without explaining why. Even locals who know the road well try to avoid it after midnight, quietly topping off their gas tanks before dusk and choosing longer routes through city streets instead. Because everyone knows, though, few will admit it out loud that something watches the road at night. Dashcam footage shared online only makes the stories worse. There are clips where headlights abruptly flicker out for no reason and radios that cut to static just before the footage freezes. Drivers post videos showing pale shapes darting across the road, gliding against the wind, dissolving like mist. Sometimes, audio recordings pick up faint screams, though the car's cabin is silent. The screams don't echo like human voices. They slice in, thin and high, then vanish. The most infamous legend tied to this haunted stretch is the headless ghost of Jeju-ro. She is said to appear on rainy nights when the fog clings low to the asphalt like a second skin. A lone woman, soaked and trembling, stands on the shoulder of the highway, waving frantically for help. Drivers who see her often stop out of instinct, guilt, or pity. That's their first mistake. Those who survive say she climbs silently into the back seat without opening the door. There is no sound, no weight shifting on the suspension, just a sudden cold wetness soaking into the upholstery. She never speaks. She never moves. She just stares straight ahead as drops of water trickle from her clothes onto the floor. Some drivers report a faint smell of salt water, though Jeju-ro lies far from the sea, and if you look in the rearview mirror, if you dare you see the truth, her head is gone. The first major sighting dates back to 1995. A bus driver reported a young woman waving desperately on the shoulder near the 17-kilometer marker. He let her on. She sat quietly for several minutes, dripping onto the seat. Then, halfway through the ride, she was gone. His passengers screamed when they saw her sitting 2 rows behind him, holding her head in her lap, mouth frozen in a silent scream. When police searched the bus, there was nothing except the driver's seat, soaked through as if someone had wrung out a wet dress across it. Since then, dozens of strange accidents have plagued Jeju-ro. Cars have been found crumpled against guardrails with no skid marks to show braking. Others are discovered idling on the shoulder, drivers slumped over the wheel, breathing but unconscious. Their skin is clammy, their hair is wet, their clothes smell faintly of marsh water. Mechanics complain about cars that break down only on that road, batteries suddenly drained as though something had sucked the energy out of them. Dash cams from crash investigations sometimes show a pale figure standing motionless in the center of the lane seconds before impact. And then, nothing. No one knows who she island. Some urban explorers claim she is the ghost of a newlywed killed in a car crash on her way to Incheon Airport. Her body never recovered from the wetlands surrounding the highway. Others whisper a darker theory, that she is not a ghost at all, but a gwishin, a water spirit. In Korean folklore, gwishin are souls who drowned and can't move on, cursed to drag others to watery deaths to replace them. They are jealous, vengeful things, unable to set foot on dry land, so they hunt from places where water seeps under the world lakes, marshes, flooded ditches, and maybe the swampy earth beneath Jeju-ro. Some victims who survived crashes on Jeju-ro describe strange hallucinations. They say the road suddenly bent when it should have been straight, that their vision blurred like looking through water, that they heard something tapping gently on the rear windshield, though no one was behind them. One man, a delivery driver, claimed he saw a woman standing in the road at 2:13 a.m. He swerved, hit nothing, and pulled over in shock. When he checked the clock again, it read 3:47. He had no memory of the missing hour. Others speak of hearing voices, faint and wet, whispering from the back seat, just behind the ear, just out of reach. Police rarely speak publicly about the ghost, but off-duty officers sometimes admit they avoid driving there alone. They claim there are more accidents on foggy nights, more unexplained breakdowns near the marsh bridges, more dashcam footage with static interference and sudden blackouts. As if something drains not just batteries, but life. And maybe that's the truth. Maybe the woman isn't just haunting the road, maybe she is part of it now. So if you ever find yourself driving Jiayu Row after midnight, and the fog rolls in low and silent, and your headlights seem too weak for the dark, don't stop, don't slow down, and whatever you do, don't look in the rearview mirror. Because if you see her there, she sees you too, and she will follow. She always follows.